We know where Harold Perkins will be lining up in 2025. But if you listen to Locked on LSU, you already knew that.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. The LSU baseball Tigers, second of a back-to-back. They're at Nicholls. We'll give you a preview of that game. Tiger basketball wins their second in a row, blasting South Carolina. We'll get to that. But we now know officially where Harold Perkins will be lining up in 2025. Hat tip to Julie Boudouin of On3, who had a one-on-one with Blake Baker, and she got the LSU DC to confirm that Harold Perkins will be, in fact, playing the star position in the LSU defense for 2025. Now, hat tip to Julie. She got Blake Baker to say it on the record. But if you listen to Locked on LSU, literally the day that Harold Perkins announced that he was returning to LSU, December the 27th, we did a show here, and I told you this. What I have been told, and I shared this with you, I might as well tell you everything. When I learned last Saturday that Harold Perkins was coming back to LSU and they were just making the announcement video, one of the things I was told in no uncertain terms is that Harold Perkins is coming back to play the star position. He is not going to play off the ball in 2025. There you have it, from the horse's mouth. Told you literally the day that Harold Perkins came back. Now, Blake Baker has said it officially on the record, but if you're an everydayer, shout out to you because you've known that for months now, and you can confidently say, yep, Scone told me that at the end of December. 2 months ago, Scone told me that the day that Harold Perkins was coming back, that he was going to play the star position. And it's 100%, I'll tell you now, the same thing I said then. It's 100% the right decision. It's 100% amazing for LSU that Harold's coming back, and it's the right decision for him to play star. If you remember, Perkins, as a freshman, was incredible. He changed the Ole Miss game. He took over the Arkansas game. He was spying Heisman winner Bryce Young in the Alabama game, the one that LSU ultimately won in overtime. Harold Perkins is a queen piece on the chessboard. For all the LSU fans that try to downplay or poo-poo Perkins, direct your criticism not at Perkins. Direct your criticism at the LSU coaching staff. Direct your criticism at Matt House. Direct your criticism this past year, at the beginning of the year, at Blake Baker. Now, I can fully understand why Harold Perkins wants to play off the ball. This isn't anything new that I'm saying here today. It's the thing I've said ever since he showed up on campus. I get it. He's looking at NFL teams and saying, I want to show them I can be an every down linebacker. I got to play off the ball. I can't just be a pass rush specialist. Well, they gave him the opportunity going into 2023 to prove he could be an off-the-ball linebacker. And Perkins' numbers were almost identical to his freshman year numbers, but played more snaps, in fairness, and that defense was absolutely atrocious. They go into 2024, new defensive coordinator Blake Baker. They're letting him try it again. And remember, by the way, he started the season off the ball, and after that first month, it was pretty evident this wasn't going to fly. They moved him to the nickel Sam role. They go into the offseason with Blake Baker, trying to let him play off the ball again, and we saw what happened. He got caught up in the wash against USC, was ineffective against Nicholls. Then he, unfortunately, as we know, got injured against UCLA, and his season was lost. But for Harold Perkins, the best thing he can do is acknowledge his skill set and maximize it. Because there aren't too many dudes built like Harold Perkins who can bend the edge and rush the passer in an elite level like he can, who can also run sideline to sideline and tackle in space, and who can also turn and run and cover. Harold Perkins has the rare ability to do all of those things. The weakest part of his game is tackling and playing physical in between the tackles, because that's not what he is. The other thing I'll tell you why it's so significant to have Perkins play that position in this defense in 2025 is to look at who he is replacing. It was Major Burns who played the star position for you in 2024 in Blake Baker's defense. And if you go look at Pro Football Focus, Major Burns was by far your lowest rated defensive starter. As a matter of fact, if you look at the grades of every single defensive player for the entire season, anyone who took a defensive snap for LSU, Major Burns graded 31st out of 44 players. He was by far the lowest graded player among your defensive starters, with a season defensive grade, according to Pro Football Focus, of 57. That's just not good enough. There's no way to look at it at a 57.8 and say, yep, that's what you need out of a starter. His run defense grade was a 53. He was actually quite good in pass rush, but his tackling grade was just a 55. His coverage grade was a 54. Major Burns was a liability on the field in 2024. Now you take Harold Perkins, who is an elite pass rusher, who can tackle in space, who can turn and cover. He is a more complete player fit for that position. This makes LSU's defense dramatically better in 2025, because at the spot you were weakest, you were the weakest on your defense at safety and the star position. You are automatically better with Tamarcus Cooley coming in as a transfer playing safety. You hope Jordan Gilbert, healthier, year older, can play better. Deshaun Spears, year older, continues to improve. And Harold Perkins replacing Major Burns at star makes you better there as well. In the spot you are weakest, you are poised to be exponentially better in 2025. And yes, Harold Perkins coming back for his senior season and playing his true natural position is a great thing for this defense. And you may say, why not play him at defensive end? Because he's too small to play defensive end. You can't just line up Harold Perkins at defensive end, because if you do, then you get into a situation where teams are just going to run directly at him. And you're going to have the same situation when he's playing off the ball. When you got a 320-pound offensive tackle getting in Harold Perkins' pads, a lean blocker from a fullback, an H-back, an F-back, trying to blow him off the ball, which is not his suitability. Let him play in space. It's absolutely the right call. I think the coaches knew it. They were willing to let Harold Perkins try to play off the ball because that's what he wanted to do, and they were willing to give him the opportunity. And I don't blame him. In the same way that 15 years ago, Les Miles tried to let Russell Shepard play quarterback because he promised he would, and Shep ended up spending 3 years just trying to find a spot on the field where he fit. Something similar has happened here with Harold Perkins, but his best spot is star, and that's where they're going to play him in 2025, and the LSU defense is going to be dramatically better for it. So what we told you 2 months ago, Blake Baker has now confirmed, courtesy of Julie Boudouin and On 3. Good for Julie. Seriously, hat tip to Julie for getting Blake Baker to say it on the record, but we told you 2 months ago, Harold Perkins can play star in 2025. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed. All while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. The LSU basketball Tigers got their second consecutive win, my goodness, on Tuesday night. LSU pounces on South Carolina, 81-67, in a game that, quite honestly, was never really close. LSU got off to a great start, and they outscored South Carolina 41-27 in the first half. So the Tigers took that 14-point lead in the halftime. The teams played to an even 40-all draw in the second half, but the Tigers get away with their second consecutive win behind Cam Carter's 17 points, and they rolled past South Carolina. So the Tigers rallied improbably to beat Oklahoma on Saturday. Now they won back-to-back games after having lost 7 straight and losing 10 of 11 to start conference play. How about Cam Carter? I know we've talked about it a bunch. It becomes almost like a broken record at this point, but this team offensively goes only as far as Cam Carter can carry, drag, pull them. He was 7 of 14 from the field for the Tigers. So 50% from the floor for LSU. Very nice to see Mike Williams come off the bench and score 13. Victorious Miller, the freshman, added 12. Jai Bailey, 11. And LSU had 13 three-pointers in the game. Now, Jamari Thomas from South Carolina certainly put up a fight, and he scored 23 points. Colin Murray-Boyles, who'd been their best scorer at this point, had a double-double with 16 and 10. It just didn't matter. This was an LSU team that outclassed South Carolina, and as much as LSU has struggled, it shows the line of demarcation between even LSU and South Carolina at the bottom of the league. Carolina's 0-13. LSU is 3-10. LSU is the second worst team in the conference. But when you beat the worst team in the conference by double digits, it shows you that gap. And by the way, Oklahoma, you're tied with Oklahoma at 3-10 in the conference, but you did beat Oklahoma head to head. The tricky part about this league is you can look at the top, and it's a very top-heavy league. Auburn, Bama, Florida, Texas A&M, Missouri there at 8-4, Tennessee, top 10 team in the country at 8-5 in the conference, 21-5 overall. Ole Miss, which has slid a little, but they're 8-5, and I think they're still certainly destined to be a tournament team. Mississippi State is 7-6 in the conference. Here's context. Mississippi State is 7-6 in the league. They're a ranked team. Kentucky is 6-6 in the league. They're a ranked team. There's Texas at 5-7. Vanderbilt at 5-7, Texas at 5-8, Arkansas at 4-8, who you beat, Georgia at 4-9. Then there's Oklahoma and LSU at 3-10. The point is, you are a blink away from being in contention with the teams in the middle of this league. So while the record is ugly and it has not been fun, you had Ole Miss beat, and you let that one get away. You beat Arkansas, and lost to them the second time, but you beat them the first time. You beat Oklahoma. Your record is not good, and you're just not a great basketball team. I don't think that's breaking news to anybody at this point. But you're also not dramatically far away from being competitive. I didn't say from being great. I didn't say from being a tournament team. I didn't say from being a contender. I said from being competitive. And LSU on Tuesday played a full 60 minutes of basketball, and South Carolina is winless in conference, but LSU did what you should do when you're better than a winless team. That line, by the way, was 2.5. LSU is a 2.5-point home favorite against South Carolina, and they beat them by 14. So the lead got to as many as 20, by the way, which is about 3 minutes to play before South Carolina made it look a little more respectable. But the Tigers were good from start to finish. 19 assists to just 10 turnovers. That'll play for LSU. And again, as we mentioned, you made 13 three-pointers, shot 43% behind the arc. This is an LSU team that has not shot the ball. They have not won the field goal statistic much this year, but they did on Tuesday night. And your bench was quite good. Your bench outscored South Carolina's bench 30-15. So LSU gets the win. They move to 3-13 in conference play. That's the good news. Back-to-back wins. Here's the bad news. You're done winning. And I don't mean to be negative. I'm not trying to be negative Nelly. I'm not trying to poo-poo everybody and throw a wet blanket on the fire. But when you look at what you have to be realistic. You're home against number 2 Florida. You're home against number 6 Tennessee. You're at number 21 Mississippi State. You're at number 17 Kentucky. You're home against number 7 Texas A&M. 5 games remaining. 3 home games, all against top 10 teams in America. 2 road games against ranked teams. You're done winning. I guess it's always possible you could pull some dramatic upset and steal a game somewhere along the way. It's just not likely. So you're going to backslide, and you're going to lose your next 5, and you're probably going to lose your first game in the conference tournament, and you're going to lose your next 6, and your season's going to end. And then the question will turn to the future. And as we've learned, and I've been emphatic here, Matt McMahon is coming back. He is going to be back next year. And my understanding is, I'll go ahead and make another prediction here. Hope y'all remember me saying it here, that in very short order, you're going to hear LSU announce plans for a new arena. And like I've said, LSU spent less than $2 million on this NIL roster, and they're going to spend north of $5 million next year. That's the commitment they've made. So you announce plans for a new arena, you go spend in NIL, you ink one of the top classes in America, you sign some of the best transfer players in America, and you actually invest in this roster, and you give Matt McMahon a loaded gun to see what he can do next year. And I'm going to say it again. I'm going to be so consistent on this. Y'all are going to be sick of hearing me say the same thing. I'm not telling you Matt McMahon is going to make LSU a title contender. Not telling you that. What I am saying is it is impossible today to judge whether or not Matt McMahon is capable because you have not allowed him to have a fair fight with the resources he's been given. I don't care if you brought Adolph Rupp and John Wooden back from the dead and combined them into one super coach and they coach this team. You're no better than 3-10 in the conference at this point. Maybe you find a way to beat Ole Miss to get to 4. Maybe. But you probably would have lost to Oklahoma as well. Point is, give Matt McMahon the resources he needs. You're not going to win the rest of the way. But give McMahon the resources he needs to be competitive next year. Judge him on next year. If next year we're at this point and you're having the same conversation after you invest in this roster and you're looking up and you're 3-10 with 2 games or with 5 games to go, fire him. It's not going to work. But let's at least give him the opportunity to see what it looks like when he actually has the resources to compete in the most loaded conference in the history of college basketball. LSU baseball hits the road on Wednesday for the second of a back-to-back. Quick preview when we come back. Locked on LSU, your team every day. So LSU baseball is going to hit the road to take on Nicholls, second of a back-to-back. Here was Jay Johnson after LSU beat Southern on Tuesday about going on the road to take on Nicholls.
I think it's good. It'll be a different test. It's going to be cold. It'll be a sold-out crowd. You know, kind of one of my rules on the road is you got to be able to win by 3 just because the crowd and the atmosphere. Yeah, you got your routine and umpiring sometimes. And, you know, so we'll be ready to go. I think these guys are probably chomping at the bit for a little bit more difficult challenge, and I think that will definitely present itself tomorrow just with being on the road and getting on a bus and getting off a bus and not having to, you know, be totally cozy and comfortable and all those things. So looking forward to the game tomorrow night.
Couple of things. By the way, we are committing to our baseball quick recap episodes. So I plan on giving you a recap episode for every LSU baseball game this year. My sincere hope is no circumstance arise that would take me away from that. So I have a quick recap episode available from Tuesday's win over Southern if you want to check that out, specific to that game. But it did also mention there in that game a little bit of a preamble for what's going to happen against Nicholls in Thibodaux on Wednesday night. Now, Jay mentioned the weather, and he's right. The temperature should be hovering around 40 degrees about the time of first pitch down in Thibodaux on Wednesday night. That is uncomfortable. Can you go out there despite the cold weather and be effective? That's number one. Number two, I love going on the road early in the season. You got to do it 15 times in conference play. You got to go on the road to play in Hoover. There's always the possibility you could play regional or super regional on the road, which you had to do last year. And of course, if you make it to Omaha, you're going on the road. I love getting away from Alex Box Stadium. I love this team early in the season going and being uncomfortable. Get on a bus. Go stand in somebody else's batter's box. Look at a different batter's eye. Sit in a different dugout. Have different fans cheering against you. Have different dimensions at the ballpark that you got to deal with. All the things that would make you uncomfortable. You spent all fall, all preseason practice, and most of your pre-conference games playing at Alex Box Stadium. It is familiar. It is friendly. It is comfortable. You've got to go make yourself uncomfortable, because uncomfortable is coming when you have to go on the road for 15 games in SEC play. Listen, you're going to go play at Globe Life against Dallas Baptist. You're going to go play in the Frisco Classic, and that's great. You're going to be challenged against good competition. This is a different type of challenge, and I'm for it. I'm good with LSU going on the road. Now, as of the time that I'm recording this, LSU is not yet named a starting pitcher for this game. My guess is it's going to be Gavin Guidry. Now, Gavin Guidry came to LSU, we well know, was a top infielder and pitcher. He settled into a role as the closer, and he ended up getting the final out of the College World Series in 2023. Last year, established that same role as the back of the bullpen guy for LSU. But he's a guy that they've talked about and given opportunities at time to see if he could extend and be a starting pitcher. My guess is that Gavin Guidry, who we haven't seen pitch yet, is going to start the game against Nicholls. Now, you can go through the weekend and say, why haven't we seen Gavin Guidry? You didn't need him. You struck out 45 and walked 2 through those 3 games. And then you had to play Tuesday, Wednesday. So for Jay Johnson in his brain and for Nate Yeske, he's looking at this going, okay, we've got 5 games in 6 days. We got to go play 9 innings 5 times in 6 days. That's a heavy workload on your pitching staff. So how do you break it up? Over the weekend, your 3 starters all got 5 innings, and then you went to, as Jay Johnson calls it, as we learned from Jacob Myers, 1-inning assassins. Boom, boom, boom. One to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. The exception was William Schmidt, who went 2 2/3 before he handed the ball off to Jaden Newt to get the final out on Sunday. So the one guy you haven't seen yet, of course, they saved Connor Ware and Zach Cohen, who each went 3 innings against Southern. The one guy you haven't seen yet is Gavin Guidry. My guess is they give Gavin Guidry the ball to see if he can match that and go get him 3 innings. Go get 9 outs, get off to a good start, hand it to the next, and then maybe you go to those 1-inning assassins. So all those guys who maybe it would be a bullpen day for them on Wednesday, instead of a bullpen day, they all get an opportunity to go throw an inning or so against Nicholls on the road to stand, again, same thing, to stand on someone else's mound with a different backstop, different feel, all that stuff to see if you can go pitch in that situation, see if the Tigers can get a win against Nicholls on the road. I'm also going to be very interested, aside from the pitching, to see how Jay Johnson handles catcher. So as of now, what we've seen, Game 1, they started Luis Hernandez. Game 2, they started Cade Arambidi. Game 3, they started Luis Hernandez. Game 4, Tuesday against Southern, they started Cade Arambidi. It would stand to reason, based on that path, that they are going to start Luis Hernandez, but we'll see. Listen, defensively, catcher has been a bit of a bugaboo at this point. The one run that Southern scored on Tuesday was after a bleeder up the middle, a blooper into shallow right that went for a double, but was nothing more than a little blooper. And the run scored when Cade Arambidi, when Blaze Priester couldn't block up a ball. He tried to stab it instead of dropping to his knees. It went through his legs, and the ball went to the backstop. The run scored. That's your one liability so far defensively. So who draws the assignment on Wednesday down at Nicholls? based on the way they volleyed, my guess is it's going to be Luis Hernandez's turn. So if Hernandez catches and is batting from the right side, my guess is you'll probably put a DH in there, provided Nicholls starts a righty, you probably put a DH in from the left side. Maybe Ashton Larson plays right. Maybe Jake Brown plays right and Ashton Larson DHs. Just look for something along those lines they might do. Remember, Josh Pearson started in right against Southern. Maybe Jake Brown goes back to right in this game and Ashton Larson DHs in place of Ethan Fry, who DH'd on Tuesday. Jay Johnson has an unenviable task. It's a problem, but it's a good problem to have. He has too much talent. He has too much talent on this team, and he's trying to find a way to get all of them innings and all the pitchers' innings, all the hitters' ABs, time in the field, and trying to find out who his best guys are that he can count on. This is just another opportunity to do that. So we'll see how they line it up, but this should be, most likely will be, our first opportunity to see Gavin Guidry, very likely be in a starting role. We'll see if he extends in this ball game against Nicholls on Wednesday. And you know where to find us. As soon as that game goes final, we'll be right here on Locked on LSU for your immediate reaction post-game show. We'll look for you there. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen every single day. Now, for your second listen, how about you go check out Locked on College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. Don't wait for March. Be the most informed college basketball fan now. Find Locked on College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, if you are listening on podcasts, thank you so much. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.